9. 1 minute. Are these? Okay, that's great.
Very.
Okay. Well. Roberto. Is everybody ready? Everyone ready?
Ready. I am gonna be.
Good evening, everyone. The regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Indianapolis Public Library is now called to order. Ms. Gilbert, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Biederman,
Present.
Mr. Lane,
Present.
Dr. Murtada,
Present.
Dr. Palacio,
Present.
Dr. Payne,
Present.
Ms. Tribble,
Present.
and Dr. White.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. Good evening and welcome everyone to this regular meeting of the Indianapolis Public Library Board of Trustees. I'm looking forward to informative presentations, thoughtful discussions, and a productive meeting as we continue to advance the mission, vision, and goals of the Indianapolis Public Library. I want to start by expressing gratitude to the staff at our historic Irvington branch for hosting us tonight. We will hear Irvington's branch manager in just a few minutes prior to beginning our board business. And in the vein of gratitude, I also want to thank Anita Harden, our interim chief operating officer, who has worked closely with our executive team for the past few months. We will hear her strategic plan status report later in the agenda, but thank you, Anita, heartfelt thank you for lending your executive and strategic expertise and insights with our staff. You helped keep the trains running on time during a period of transition, and particularly with tracking the critical progress on our strategic plan. Your background as a trusted leader and interim executive at major organizations in Indianapolis made our library better because of your service. Thank you for coming and for continuing our momentum. And we're looking forward to your report later. I'd also like to acknowledge a few important initiatives and the milestones. On top of that list is our public library summer reading program. Our most popular program will be wrapping up this week. The hard work of our librarians and staff has paid off. So here are some of the statistics. In both the kids and adult reading programs, we have reached 18.6 million minutes read and logged. We are at 81%. We're at 81% participation of those who registered for the kids and teens program. That's really good. And we are at 60% participation of those who registered for the adult program. We have had 8,645 kids attend the programs this summer, and that is really great. So we can give another round of applause. The successful conclusion of the summer reading program signals the start of the school year for Indianapolis K-12 students. For fall semester, Indianapolis Public Library is adding 6 more IPS schools to the other 52 public and private schools who participate in our shared system collection. This massive shared library collection benefits Indianapolis students by offering a wealth of materials at their fingertips, including 40,000 digital ebooks and downloadable audiobooks for instantaneous use. Students who use IPS shared system may borrow from their own school's library collection, as well as more than 2 million additional NDPL library books, resources, and databases. Thank you to our partner schools and our NDPL librarians and collection management professionals who maintain this collection for Indy students. In addition to that major contribution to the larger Indianapolis community, I want to make note that on June 28th, the mayor's office, Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, and the Marion County Sheriff's Office hosted a joint media conference to announce an expansion of the free gun lock program across the city of Indianapolis. At that event, they extended their appreciation to the Indianapolis Public Library for our partnership in the initiative over the years. In the past year alone, NDPL has distributed more than 2,000 locks from the convenience of our branches. Another meaningful community partnership that just concluded was with Operation Backpack. Central Library was a drop-off location for donated backpacks and supplies to this annual program that's sponsored by Volunteers of America. This program shares a mission very similar to our own, helping kids thrive and start the school year successfully. We are proud of NDPL's role in these partnership efforts, and I encourage our stakeholders, partners, staff, and patrons to consider being an ambassador of the library and to look for ways to extend both our message and partnership opportunity. I was glad to be approached by my employer, KPMG, that has literacy as a shared value for the corporation. And we are on the calendar to help volunteer with the cleanup service project at Central in August. So someone said, a good library builds a collection, a great library builds a community. And I want to thank our staff and all of our stakeholders and our patrons for helping to build our communities. Next, I have a couple of important board developments to share. As a board, we will begin the process of formal and legal review of the Board of Trustees bylaws, code of ethics, and other governance documents. This review is another way the board is responsive to the advancement of our climate improvement process. You can expect to hear updates on this at future board meetings. It's a regular process. Finally, we will reach an eagerly anticipated milestone. Our newest branch will be opening on Saturday, August 19th at Fort Bend. That's another clap-worthy situation. Mark your calendar to join the family-friendly festivities at the doors to the Fort as the doors to the Fort Bend branch officially open at 10 a.m. We anticipate this branch serving as many as 200,000 patrons a year in a vibrant and growing community. The Fort Bend branch is also on a path to be the first autistic certified library in the Midwest and only the second in the country. From news of our newest branch at Fort Bend, let me move our focus to one of our most historic branches. Our host tonight, Irvington, located in the largest protected historic district in Indianapolis. I would like to introduce Mr. Adam Todd, branch manager. Thank you, Mr. Todd, for hosting tonight's board meeting for the good food, and I'll turn the floor over to you for your branch.
Say something.
Absolutely.
Madam Chairperson, this is in regard to your announcement about the IPS shared system, adding 6 more schools to the 52. I'm very happy to hear that, but I'm even happier to find out that Crispus Attucks will now have a certified librarian at the school, which also tells me that there are other schools. I just haven't done the research yet because I just found this out. But I am elated that our schools are now having certified librarians in their schools. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
just,
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Penny. Great,
thank you.
thank you.
So, President of the board, thank you for coming up there tonight. We enjoyed having you and welcome.
Can do. So thank you for coming tonight. I'll keep my remarks fairly brief tonight. I just wanted to kind of highlight a few things we've been doing here over the last year, to let you know about some things that we're proud of. One thing is this building was opened in November of 2001. And so in November of 2021, we turned 20 years old, but with COVID protocols being they were at the time, we decided to push a birthday celebration to 2022. So in December, we had our 21st birthday party, if you will. No alcohol, but it was an event. We had cake and punch. We had a harp player, and we had a slideshow up on the board up here with lots of pictures from when the branch opened, the old Brown branch. We had some pictures that the Irvington Historical Society let us use, which were really cool. We had a ton of old former staff members, retirees, people in the community. Some of the Irvington Community Council members were here, and we had a really nice time. It's fun to hear some stories about when the branch opened and reminisce about that a little bit. So it was a really positive event, and that was last December. And then every year, the biggest event in Irvington is the Halloween Festival. So that's coming up here in October. It's always the Saturday right before Halloween. And last year, for the first time, we weren't open on the day of the festival, which if you know anything about the festival, maybe you've all been, last year they estimated about 70,000 people were here in a few block radius. So it's a street party. They get a ton of people, and that's 70,000 people over 6 hours or something, that it runs. And it was better for us with getting staff in and out, and also with the planners were pleased that they could use our entire parking lot and that sort of thing. But the way we've found to remain a part of the festival is a few different things. One, we do a lot of programs leading up to the festival that are Halloween themed to sort of help promote it. So there's the Irvington Black Hat Society, which is a group of witches, and they come in and do a story time here. This year we're planning on having like a Halloween or horror themed game, family game day. So we like to do things like that to get ready for the festival. Also, every year we host the poster contest. So citizens can design their own posters for the Halloween festival. And then some of you I know are out there, they're on display right now. Today is the first day for voting. So we got 19 posters out there that folks in the community made. And then all week long, people can come in and vote. And then at the end of the week, they'll select a winner. And that poster will be the official one for the festival. Will be on t-shirts and other posters and things like that. So we like doing that. We're also the headquarters for the window painting sign up. So leading up to the Halloween festival, all the businesses and organizations like us let mostly kids paint pictures on the windows, on the outside of the windows, to kind of decorate the neighborhood. So we're the place where folks come to sign up for that and get assigned a spot to paint, and then also they paint our windows, and it's always pretty cool. So that's another thing we really like, a way to be involved with the festival here. And one other thing I was going to talk about is our teen zone. So we're within close walking distance to two schools that are part of the Irvington Community Schools Charter Group. So there's a middle school and a high school. And we get a good crowd of kids in the afternoons when school's in. And before I got here, they had started a teen zone, but then 2 weeks later, we shut down for COVID. So now that things are back up and running, we've been doing the teen zone in the afternoon. So it's this place where, and they do this at Warren and Pike and some of the other ones, but it's a place where the teens can hang out, be a little louder, not necessarily, disrupt the others, but we have a huge collection of board games, and we have a button maker and crafts and stuff, and it's a good place for them to hang out. So that's been a really positive experience for us. In fact, in May, before school let out, they reached out to us. The middle school was putting on a parade for their community heroes. And so they, they had firefighters and police officers and whatnot. And they asked if we'd like our staff to come, and they would consider us, community heroes. So anyway, a few of our staff members got to go and be honored at the parade. So that was also really nice to, hear that they like it here. So that was also a good thing. So that really kind of wraps up the things I wanted to talk to you about tonight. And again, I thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there
Uh,
questions? There usually are questions.
I'd just like to thank you for providing the disaggregated data for your library, because you've got everything covered. Race, income, educational level, age, poverty, and employment. So
Oh,
it's
thank you.
very, very informational.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a great conversation with Katie, the children's librarian, and just thinking of how important it is for all the branches to have these children's librarians to support the needs of the kids. I just love talking to her because she was talking about making sure that the Latino population, which is 11% of the neighborhood, are, their books are centrally located. And so it's really nice to see that, your staff is creative and they're innovative and making sure that things are visible and welcoming to everybody. So I applaud you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, the staff here is, I have an awesome staff here, and they've over the last year or so, we've done a lot to try to move our Spanish language materials in the juvenile and adult sections to more prominent locations. The children's librarians are particularly good about, when we make displays, having books in English and Spanish. So if there's a display about space books or something, they'll have them in both languages out there for people. And we also, Katie might have mentioned this, but we just recently added a bilingual element to our story times. So we have a volunteer who comes in and will do a book, in Spanish, and that's gone over really well as well. Yeah,
That's really great.
thanks.
I want to commend you for your appreciation of the teen zone.
Oh, sure.
That's not always the case in some locations. And that's nothing to celebrate. So congratulations on giving teens a positive place to go.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We have a really enthusiastic staff, and they genuinely have built really nice relationships with a lot of the kids. So it's been good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Todd. Next, going to hear from Mr. Brad Johnson, Supervisor of Shipping and Receiving, who's going to give an overview.
Hello.
Your report's going around. Thank you.
I have a lot of information, so I wanted to kind of distribute it to you guys, so you could follow along if you want and make sure I don't miss anything. Good evening, board members, Mr. Hill, Ms. Gilbert, and Library Council. I am Brad Johnson. I'm the Supervisor of Shipping and Receiving. I work at LSC, which is the Library Services Center. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to describe the work that takes place in shipping and receiving. After speaking at the board meeting in June, which I'll admit it was a spur of the moment decision, I'd like to share a little bit more information so there's a better understanding of how things move throughout the system and how people work together to provide services to patrons and staff. The goal of sharing this information is not to show that certain areas are more important than others. It's to show that when people work together with the same goal in mind, great things can be done. So what does shipping and receiving do? Shipping and receiving is what you would call a closed department, one of many that does not often get attention at board meetings. Shipping and receiving is made up of one supervisor, which is me, 6 full-time and 1 part-time team member drivers, and 1 team lead position. Shipping and receiving mainly works in the background and completes deliveries to branches early in the morning so that material is ready there when staff arrive. To accomplish this, each day shipping and receiving uses 4 box trucks and 2 cargo vans to make deliveries. Locations are assigned to specific routes based on the amount of material being delivered and picked up. Regional branches that have larger amounts are assigned to box trucks, and neighborhood branches are assigned to cargo vans. Route start times are staggered and start as early as 6 a.m. The team also works closely with every location, the processing team, outreach staff, supply staff, and the book sale team. Every day, Monday through Friday, shipping and receiving will make 26 stops at NDPL locations. During the school year, when the shared system locations are open, there are 45 additional stops added to the routes per week. During a typical week, when every location is open, approximately 930 miles are driven to make 175 stops to deliver and pick up material from locations all around Marion County. Delivering and picking up material is not all that the shipping and receiving staff do. I'll describe some of the other responsibilities. The second biggest task for the team is sorting material. When the shipping and receiving team returns to LSC, Library Services Center, they bring totes of unsorted material back from every location. Team members spend half of every day feeding items into a large 38-bin automated sorter machine. And they sort between 2,500 and 6,000 items a day for delivery the next day. Between January 2nd and July 3rd, shipping and receiving sorted approximately 550,000 physical items moving throughout the system. The shipping and receiving team does the majority of receiving for the system, which includes receiving deliveries of mail, new supplies, equipment, furniture, collection materials, and et cetera. Et cetera is a lot of other stuff. When an average of 20,000 new book and video materials are delivered to LSC weekly, it is unpacked and verified by team members in shipping and receiving, and then moved into processing to be made shelf ready. Supplies such as toilet paper, paper towels, cleaning supplies, equipment, and furniture are often included on a normal delivery route to the branches. At the end of every day, the shipping and receiving team loads the vehicles for the next day, including mail, supplies, equipment, dozens of sorted totes of material, and dozens of totes of new shelf-ready materials that have come from cataloging and processing. Discarded and donated items are picked up at a branch and delivered to the book sale by team members for volunteers to evaluate the material for sale or disposal. Team members also make donation pickups that are coordinated by the foundation at private residences or businesses when people are not able to bring the items to a branch or LSC. With the amount of recyclable material generated with the library's daily operations, shipping and receiving has recycling programs set up with multiple vendors to ensure material is recycled, reused, or disposed of properly. Materials that we recycle include large amounts of cardboard, paper, and plastic. We make every effort to avoid sending large quantities of items to landfills if possible. Even though this is not a complete list of everything that shipping and receiving team does, it will probably give you a good idea. In the same way that branches have a service area, so does shipping and receiving. The service area for shipping and receiving is Marion County. Even though shipping and receiving is not a direct public service area, we have a great team that works hard to make sure that public service is possible by ensuring branches have the necessary items to operate. Thank you for your time.
Wow.
Thank you.
It occurred to me when you said people don't hear about us a lot. That's a good thing. That means you're getting this stuff done that people rely on you for. So thank you so much for your.
We are happy to work in the back.
Right.
Notice us.
That's right. That's right. So congratulations and thank you for that insightful explanation and report. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Brad. Are there any other members of your team here tonight?
No.
You're well, you
I told them,
represented
I
them
told
well.
them about it, but their schedules are very early in the morning.
Right.
Um,
You had to get up at 6.
That's a long time.
Yeah,
You have to get up early in the morning.
well, we certainly appreciate you all and you represented everybody well, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
In that same vein, I just want to say that you all are the unsung heroes of the library. You really make things happen. So yeah, even though you are in the background and you're not really seen, or you're seen, you're not really seen and you're not really heard, it's really good to celebrate, the work that you do, because without you, the library really couldn't function.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that. It's now time for a public comment. The library, the public has been invited to this board meeting. And at every board meeting, we open with the time for public comment. We welcome feedback from the public about our Indianapolis libraries. And this is a time when the public may address the board. If there are several people representing the same group, we ask that you select a spokesperson. Please do not repeat the same comments someone else has offered. Please note also that this public comment time is not the appropriate forum for commenting on matters related to alleged employee misconduct. Any such matters should be brought promptly to the attention of the library CEO or the Human Resources Department, where matters can be properly addressed in compliance with established library policies and procedures. A 5-minute time limit will be allowed for each speaker. And we ask each speaker to give your name and the name of your group if you are speaking on behalf of a group. I will turn it over to Ms. Gilbert to call the speakers as it's time for them to come forward.
We have two this evening. First, we have Colette Ashad. And then after her, we will have Mashariki Dewasan. So Colette, if you'd like to make your way to the table.
He's not here? Okay. And we'll go to the next.
Yes, then Mashariki.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Evening.
My name is Queen Mother Mashariki Jawanza. I represent organizations in Cobra, Indianapolis Kwanzaa Committee, Red Beans and Greens Food Co-op, and the Ujamaa Institute of Cultural Development. I have been empowered to speak for them. First and foremost, want to say how much I love the library. I've been involved with the library as a youngster, the Hallville branch, then the Riverside branch. We always were very happy to go to Central Library. That was an outing for us. My children grew up in the library, 42nd Street and Flanner House when it opened. My grandchildren are children of the world, so they go to all the new branches that open up. So they will be at Lawrence when that opens up as well. When I heard about the summer reading program, I remember walking home with 10 books, trying to keep up with my friends and winning, of course. But unfortunately, I'm very sad to be here. Before I go there, I'd like to thank Dr. Matata, Dr. Payne, and Mr. Lane for their stand on truth and justice and for the community. We really appreciate that. We have been circulating petitions to ask for the removal of the other 4 board members who we feel that we have no confidence in your leadership. Why do we say that? We say that because, we started this journey with Michelle Hayes being the interim for 8 months, no help. She had 5 interviews. I've never had 5 interviews for any position I've ever applied for. She made it to the top 3. The other 2 that maybe you wanted flaked out. Michelle should have been seated. We would not be here today. I wouldn't be here today saying these things. That's incompetency to me. Then we bring on consultants, spending taxpayers' money. I'm a taxpayer, I'm a voter, and I really resent our money not being used wisely. For those reasons, we feel that the incompetency of the 4 of you have caused a real disruption in the library system. I praise the library workers because they have kept things going and moving. The statistics we heard today is wonderful, but that's because of the great staff. The CEO that was chosen, not sure why, you would allow yourself to be pitted against a Black woman. And I still do not know the process in which you were hired. There seems to be some illegalities there, and we're very concerned about that. But here we are. And we feel the best thing for this library is for the 4 of you to resign, to leave. The board is in disarray. And that has to affect the work of this library. And we're very concerned about that. The other thing that I would like to say, and I just like to, really, it pains me to say this, but unfortunately, the 4 of you that have positioned yourself on the wrong side of history, this will be your legacy, not all the other things, great things that you've done. What you'll be remembered for is what you have done here. And that really saddens me. So again, thank you for listening to me. I've spoken before, seems to have fallen on deaf ear. I also like to say that we're very aware that there's some outside political forces that are influencing Hope. She's influencing other people. And politics really has no business in this library. So we are very concerned about that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other people here from the public to speak? Okay, great. We'll move ahead with approval of the minutes. We have minutes from the executive session. I'm sorry, we have minutes from the regular meeting on June 26th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held June 26th, 2023? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
The minutes have been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? If hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote to approve the minutes.
Mr. Biederman,
Approve.
Mr. Lane,
Approve.
Dr. Matata,
Approve.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne,
Approve.
Dr. White,
Approve.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
The motion carries. We'll now move on to committee reports, and we will first hear from the Finance Committee. Dr. Payne.
Yes, Lolita and Mary, would you please come up?
Good evening.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, Mary and I will present the treasury report for the month ending June 30th, 2023, and year-to-date information. The treasury report begins on page 25 of the board document. I will review the revenue. Currently, we're at 59% of our budget, which is great. Being 6 months into the year, typically our budget should be 50% of our budget, but we receive 59% of our revenue that we projected. Our property taxes, we're at 60% of the budget. So that is awesome there. It's currently at $18,150,152. And our intergovernmental revenue is 3% lower, and that is because we have not received our E-rate fund. Typically, we receive it every month, but in June, there's a delay until once the sam.gov is renewed. But we went through that process and waiting for the approval for that. And charges for services, printing, public printing revenue, it seems to be consistent month to month. And miscellaneous revenue, we received the CICF funds for the InfoZone. And our interest revenue continues to grow due to higher account interest rate from the previous years. So our investment report is found on page 32. There you will find that our interest, total year-to-date interest is 558,000. And this time last year, we only earned 32,000. So you can see a great jump in that. The Huger funds is at 5.05%, and the Trust Indiana is at 5.11%. And it continues to grow at a trend about 0.06% every month. So we hope that this trend continues to grow. And our goal is to possibly invest some more money that we receive our property funds in June. So we hope to invest maybe $5 million in the Trust Indiana fund too, so it can continue to grow. On the next page, you'll see the graphs, which is another way of visual to show the month-to-date and year-to-date information for the revenue. Any questions regarding the revenue?
So with regard to property taxes, do we expect to be over by the end of the year or?
Well, if you look on page 30 of our cash flow, so we kind of project when we receive our taxes. So at this time, it's going to look like we're 60% more, but each month grows. We won't receive any more till like November. So you'll see the decline in the revenue at that time. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Any additional questions? At this time, Mary will review the expenditures.
We have a slide on the expenditures as well. Comparing to the year before, personal services and benefits continues to average for 2023, 3% lower as a percent of budget. So I'm going to clarify that line. Because while the total is up, you'll see our percent of the budget spent was 41%. And last year at this time was 44%. Some of the cause of that is that the budget's higher because we had expected more jobs to be filled and for a longer period to have higher wages. For example, we do the budget preparation in July for the next year. So we didn't know exactly when Fort Bend additional staff would be needed. And so we were cautious enough to budget extra in personal services and benefits. We are having rapid turnover of the part-time staff. So that contributes to some gaps in filling jobs as well. On supplies, there's 6% higher due to the increase in cost on office and facilities cleaning supplies. And our other services and charges overall have a 5% increase. Legal, cleaning services, and subscription renewals for software are all up. And that's, how we're all experiencing this year with inflation. Our capital outlay at this point is 1% lower than it would have been last year. So overall, the budget spent is 40% year to date of the budget. So we're under on expenditures, over on revenue. Not a bad situation. So we do have the chart as well. So yes, our personal services and benefits is the highest in the operating fund, of course. And you'll see it is more this year than last year at this time, year to date, well as just for the month. But yet, as a percent of budget, it's doing a little better than last year at this time. Okay. Any questions on expenditures?
One quick question, just to be
Mhm.
clear. We've underspent in the personal services and benefits category year to date because we had planned for Fort Bend to come online earlier than it had come online through the year, correct?
That is part of it.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions?
Do we interview the individuals when they do depart?
That will be an HR question, but I believe we do.
You mentioned rapid turnover of the part-time staff. That conversation occurs between HR and you in terms of budget.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Thank you for the report, Ms. Rankin and Ms. Campbell. Is there a motion to accept the report of the treasurer for June 2023 for filing for audit?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll now have a roll call to accept the report of the treasurer.
Mr. Beederman,
Approve?
Mr. Lane,
Approve.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne,
Approve.
Dr. White,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approve.
Thank you.
The motion carries.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Jason Tanzel of Baker and Tilly and Jeff Quackenbush of Lawrence and Thornburg. They will do a presentation of our bonds that we're pursuing.
And as they come, I just want to note that we'll now convene a public hearing. This public hearing is on the 2023 Central Library renovation and facility update project and the appropriation of proceeds of the 2023 Central Library renovation and facility update project bonds to the 2023 Nora Branch renovation and facility update project and the appropriation of proceeds of the 2023 Nora Branch renovation and facility update project bonds, and 3, the 2023 Pike Branch renovation and facility update project and the appropriation of proceeds of the 2023 Pike Branch renovation and facility update project bonds. After the presentation, we will invite comment from the audience. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Tilly Baker.
Thank you very much,
No.
Madam President.
I'm Tilly Baker and Barnes and Thornburg. I know your name's not Tilly.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thanks for having me. My name is Jason Tansel with Baker Tilly. With me is my colleague, Lacey Vachon, and we do represent the library as your municipal advisor. I have a presentation here tonight that will review the financial parameters of the 3 separate proposed projects, each at the Central Branch, the Nora Branch, and the Pike Branch. These projects will be funded through the issuance of 3 separate general obligation bonds, each in the amount of $6,105,000. These bonds will be repaid through the library's debt service fund, but it is not anticipated that these bonds will increase the debt service tax rate above 2023 levels. So we will be at 2023 levels next year in 2024. Sorry, my mic is kind of going in and out. With that, I do have a presentation that will review the parameters, but feel free to stop me at any time in the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions during the presentation or to wait until the end. With that, on slide 2 of our presentation, we have a graph that summarizes the 8 bonds outstanding of the library. These bonds, you can see, are represented in each individual color, but importantly, I would just draw your attention to the chart in 2023 and annual payments of approximately $19 million. Those do decrease to about 12 million in 2024. And then thereafter, you can see declining debt service payments in their totality, with all bonds being repaid by 2030. It's this declining debt service structure that will allow the library the possibility and opportunity to potentially bring on new debt for these three separate projects, that replaces these payments as they mature. So to the extent all else remains equal, if payments are decreasing, then we would also expect a corresponding debt service tax rate increase. So you do have an opportunity here to replace these bonds. On our next slide, we have a calculation of the library's general obligation capacity. These bonds are general obligation bonds of the library. They are direct borrowings, and there is a limitation as to how much is allowed to be issued. And this limitation is 2% of 1/3 of the most recent net assessed value, which here you can see in 2023, the net assessed value of the library is just shy of 55 billion. So once we factor in the calculation and the 62.5 million of general obligation bonds outstanding from the slide before, you can see that over $304 million is available to the library. So in total, the $18,315,000 combined for the three separate projects fits well within this parameter. Here on our next slide, we have a summary of the financial parameters that you see within your resolutions. And for your consideration tonight, it's important to keep in mind that the resolutions, we are establishing maximums, and these are maximums that we cannot exceed, but we can come down from. The items include items such as borrowing amount, repayment term, and interest rate. And so you can see here on this summary slide, for the three separate bonds that will fund the three separate projects, we have a borrowing amount not to exceed of $6,105,000. We're currently estimating that these bonds will be issued before the end of the year, so they will hit the 2024 tax rolls. And right now, an estimate of a 4-year repayment term, but we have noted here that within the resolutions for your consideration tonight, the maximum being established is an 8-year repayment term, and that's just to provide the library flexibility should anything unforeseen happen. Estimated interest expense of $886,261 for each bond is based upon our maximum established interest rate of 5.5%. And so you can see here that in total, that's $2,658,000. And that is our estimate right now using those maximum interest rates of 5.5%. If we were to go to market today, we would estimate those rates to be closer to approximately 4%. And again, our final piece here on this summary slide is no increase to the library's debt service tax rate. Our final slide here is another graph that shows the proposed 4-year repayment term of each bond, structured in conjunction with the already outstanding obligations of the library. So you can see here, each project is identified with its color, and you can see that total annual payments in 2024 are not to exceed the payment levels in 2023 and declining debt service payments thereafter. Looking at the right axis, you can see our projection for the library's debt service tax rate. And again, you can see we are expecting that to be maintained in 2024 at 3.18 cents. But that falls in 2025 and thereafter with all debt being repaid by 2030. And so you can see here that this current repayment structure does not sacrifice any future flexibility of the library if there are other capital needs in the future that the board would consider. So that concludes the financial component of the meeting, but I would be happy to turn it over to Mr. Quackenbush at Barnes and Thornburg to review the resolutions or potentially answer any questions about the financing at this time.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Tanzel. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Hill, Mrs. Campbell. I am Jeff Quackenbush with Barnes and Thornburg, and we serve as your bond counsel on these transactions. So tonight you have 6 resolutions in front of you, 2 for each of the different projects. The first ones, number 43 through 45, address the financial parameters and the issuance of the bonds on a preliminary basis as set forth in Mr. Tanzel's presentation. They are all in the amount each of $6,105,000. The first is for the Central Library project, The second is for Nora Branch renovations, and the third is for the Pike Branch renovations. The three following resolutions are for the appropriation resolutions or the appropriation of the proceeds and interest earnings that you will have in connection with the bond issues. Just like in your budget, when you approve the appropriations for all expenditures, you're required to do that in connection with bond proceeds and construction projects as well. And so those three resolutions put that in place for the library. Should the city county council also follow up and approve these as well, because we are required to go to the city county council for approval of both the bond issues and the appropriations. Should the library approve these this evening, we will make the necessary filings in the next week to 10 days to get on the city county council agenda for introduction of the ordinances, and also go to municipal corporations committee and then final approval later in early October at that point. In connection with these resolutions, they're all very similar to what you've adopted in the past for the 2021 and 2022 projects. And this process is identical to that process for those financings as well. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the resolutions. These did go through the finance committee with a do pass recommendation. If you have no questions, then at this point in time is when you would open it up to the public to provide comment on solely the projects and the financing in the two presentations that are before you this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Quackenbush?
I have one question. I'm in the facilities committee, so we're looking at all the buildings that are coming down the pike. And I think like one of the biggest obstacles we're seeing is supply chain issues and inflation. Do these account for that in the numbers, or can you explain some of that?
I cannot speak to the supply chain issues. I would recommend talking to your internal team here, but as far as interest rate, we do feel that 5.5% is the proper established maximum to account for any other potential rate increases you might see and hear about in the news.
And if there, oh, I'm sorry.
And in connection with the numbers that were presented by Mr. Parsons to us to calculate the necessary bond issues, there is a contingency line item in there to cover those inflationary costs. Now, to the extent that bids come in and these are bid over different periods of time, there is the ability then to do just certain portions of the project without jeopardizing the integrity of the rest of the project in connection with that. So yes, there is some contingency built in that's pretty reasonable, maybe a little more reasonable given where we were with inflation, but in the past. So I think we're in good shape there. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, we will have a public hearing, and we will invite those present who would like to speak to the issue of the bond issuance or the appropriation of those funds. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Oh, I'm sorry, please. Yes, please. Yes. Yep, and please say your name.
I am Brad Johnson. I am the supervisor of shipping and receiving. And all of these locations that are up for a vote are all places that I have made deliveries to. These are all places that I am familiar with, and I think these renovations would be a great thing for the community and for the library in general. I think this would be good money well spent, and I think the way that it's been outlined, I think the terms are fair. I'm not an expert in finance, but they were very well explained. So it's my opinion that this would be something worthwhile for the library to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Oh, please.
Evening. My name is Jesse Brown. I think I like these proposals. I'm just curious, how often are libraries projected to need renovation? I know time flies. It feels to me the Central Library is a brand new library. I know that's not true. I'm just wondering, how long is this projected to take these branches until they need further renovations? And are there specific plans that have been discussed that got to that $6 million figure?
Would you like to speak?
Yes, there is a contingency plan on the repairs, renovation, replacements of building systems. And after 10 years, it's always reviewed because you don't never know what's going to happen in that particular period of time. And Adam Parson has the chart and the information that we have to deal with on that. He's on a well-deserved vacation this week, but he's on top of it. And being chair of the facilities committee, I can assure you this plan is ideal. It's ideal because you're not going to increase the tax rate to the taxpayers, and you're going to meet the city council limits, so there will be no question on them approving this. In addition to that, you have some leeway, as they said to you. If inflation occurs and the contingency we have is not great enough, then there are decisions that have to be made by staff and architects or builders or what have you, but that's just part of the process. Hopefully, things are going to stable out, but like my fellow committee member, Steve said to you, we are cognizant of these things, and we realize that from the beginning to the end of the project, a lot of things could occur, but I assure you, there are several different contingencies to deal with that.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that. It definitely seemed like 5.5% is a pretty
It's
high estimate. And I know we're asking for maybe more than we need just to make sure we have. So that all seems very well designed. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? There being no more public comment, I will consider a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So the public hearing is closed. We have before us 6 bonds. There are 3 projects that are being proposed for funding. One each for Central Library, Nora Library, and Pike Library Branch. For each of those branches, there are 2 resolutions. One resolution authorizes the issuance of the bond. The second resolution actually appropriates the funding for the bond. What I would like to do with consent of the board is to take the 2 groups of 3 bonds and vote on them together, so that we don't have to do 6 different motions. We can do 2. So may I have consent to simultaneously offer 3 resolutions, 43, 44, and 45, which are related to the issuance of the bonds for Pike, Central, and Nora Libraries.
so moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We just need consent.
We just need consent. We just need consent for everybody.
I can
We have general consent.
Yes.
Everybody's good with that, right?
generally.
Generally. Okay, great. So we'll go to resolutions 43, 44, and 45. Ms. Campbell, is there any more discussion about those 3 resolutions? Okay. So resolutions 43, 44, and 45 regarding the preliminary bond reimbursement resolution for Central Library, for Nora Library, and for Pike Library has been offered, and the chair and has received a positive recommendation from the Finance Committee. So the chair would request a second to such recommendation.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
So I just want to say that thank you, Lolita, and thank you to the team for making sure that the debt service remained within what we're doing, and it follows the same sort of tapered resolution of the debt. So thank you. Great job.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call to approve resolutions 43, 44, and 45, 2023.
Mr. Beederman,
Approve?
Mr. Lane,
Approve?
Dr. Matata,
Approve.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne,
Approve.
Dr. White,
Approve.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approve. The motion carries. Now, I will ask for consent of the board to simultaneously consider items F, G, and H, resolutions 46, 47, and 48, which provide for the appropriation of the funding for the bonds that were just approved for issuance. Do I have consent?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
And Lolita, is there any additional conversation? Great. So we now have before us resolutions 46, 47, and 48, 2023. Appropriating the funding for Pike, Central, and Nora branches. We have received a positive recommendation from the Finance Committee for these resolutions, so the chair would request a second to such recommendation.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call to approve resolutions 46, 47, and 48, 2023.
Mr. Beederman,
Approve?
Mr. Lane,
Approve?
Dr. Matata,
Approve.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne,
Approve.
Dr. White,
Approve.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
The motion carries.
Madam Chair, point of personal privilege. Can we have that chart that shows the declining tax rate? Yeah, that one. This is great from a library standpoint because as that rate declines, you're going to have other facilities that's going to have to be repaired and what have you. The thing is that when you vote to have those repairs and other replacements done, you never exceed the prior rate. In other words, taxpayers are still paying the same amount of money, but you're not increasing their rate. We know what happens when you increase rates. So proper planning allows this is an ideal scenario if you're in a leadership position or a board position. And it gives us the flexibility to do the kind of replacements, repairs we're going to need over the years for the various branches to the library. So please remember this, because you're not going to see this that often in community organizations of this particular nature. That's a great picture to see. But the reality is, don't get too happy because there is a rate that we're going to have to maintain in order to do the job we need to do for the various branches, facilities, et cetera. And we're double checked on that by city council. They're not going to let us go beyond that level anyway, but it's so great to have the kind of management and leadership that allowed this to happen. So we can't take this for granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White. Are there any other comments? Did somebody want to give our staff and leadership a Okay, thank you. We'll move on to resolution number 49, transfer between classifications. Thank you.
We're back. Page 58 is the board action request 6I. This is resolution 49-2023, transfer between classifications and accounts. The transfer is in the operating to move funds from the character 1 to make up shortfalls in various character 3 accounts. The shortfalls in character 3 were caused by unbudgeted expenses such as increased use of legal services and security services. Funds were also transferred from various facility character 3 accounts to the cleaning service account in early 2023. The transfer will restore these various account balances to the original budget amount. The transfer is possible due to savings in various position vacancies during the first half of 2023, as well as funds set aside for the implementation of the 2019 compensation study. The transfer has no budget impact. The funds are moving from one account to another. On page 59, it shows the transfer from operating salaries of $800,000 to character 3 other services and charges. And again, we average about 19 vacancies per month out of the 589 positions filled. And this is possible due to some of the executive level positions that was not filled in Fort Bend location for the delay in that opening of that location. And also for funds set aside for the implementation of the 2019 compensation study. Again, when we budgeted for this was possibly during the months of July through August of 2023. And therefore, we didn't know how much we needed for the compensation increase that we provided to the staff earlier this year. So there is a little surplus there, and that allowed us the possibility to move these funds from character 1 to character 3. And this was approved in our finance committee, so.
Great.
Let me add something. But this, and I heard what you said, but this would still be taking $800,000 from staff salaries to fund such things as legal services and so all of these things that you have listed down here, correct?
It will be taken from that account, not actually from their salaries. These are from unfilled vacancies from the first 6 months of the year, as well as the budgeting amount for the compensation study. The last 6 months of the fiscal year is covered for compensation studies. In fact, I did a cash flow projection, which is on your right, what would show that we still have more than enough in personnel services to cover filled and unfilled position. You see that 4.2 million still left in salaries.
So are the salary adjustments, that account, is that account for raises, or what does the salary adjustment mean?
The salary, yeah, it accounts for a variety of things.
Okay.
So it can include raises.
I know there was a staff member 3 months ago who was asking for a tuition reimbursement. Could something like that come out of a fund like this as well?
Well, I do know that the tuition reimbursement policy, although it's in revision currently right now, with the possible increase in 2024, that there's a cap. That policy was established way before I got here, but there's a cap for individuals. I think it's $3,000 a year. So I believe the staff member that you're referring to did receive her reimbursement. If I'm thinking about the same person you're referring to.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we've heard the discussion. I think we need to actually second the favorable recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Now, is there any further discussion?
There's snow removal on here. I know we talked about snow removal in the budget for in facilities committee, but it always seems like there's always like a surplus from what Adam says in snow removal, and yet we're adding $105,000 to the snow removal account.
We're actually not adding it. We're restoring it to the account balance from the original budget amount, because we actually moved that originally to cover some cleaning services, the contract that we had. So now we're restoring that amount from the original budget. Good question.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, questions?
Could these figures, could this $800,000 come out of any other kind of account? I don't know.
Now, this actually right now is the best account for it to move from, because we did have a surplus in the salaries due to, we kind of budgeting for the 2019 compensation study. We
Mhm.
didn't know how much that would be. At that time, our predecessor was budgeting. So now that we see that we can move it, it's best to move it this way instead of having to go to the city county council for additional appropriation for this character 3, because we still have this money in our budgets.
Because I mean, I was told that also there was no funding for children's librarians for certain libraries, so, but there's $800,000 sitting here, so I'm just a little confused how that works.
I don't have the answer.
So we did say that there was not money for this year because that money, I believe, is for salaries that were already.
This is, oh, okay, now, this is for salaries that's already in our budget appropriated for our new FTE, that is not in our budget. So that's,
Not in our budget.
And so, but these positions haven't been filled, correct? These 19 vacancies,
right.
but we do plan on,
Average.
we do plan on filling them.
Yes, that's just an average of the person, so it can vary per month.
And the largest was probably the 2 executive level spots that have been vacant.
Are there any other questions or comments?
It appears we'll still end favorably at 4.2 million at the end of the year. So
One question.
Yeah.
So follow up with Stephen's question. So within the $4 million, there's still money to hire the person that or the position he's referring to?
yes, the board would have to, it would have to be brought to the board as a new position type.
The budget, if I can speak, the budget not only includes a dollar amount, but it also authorizes a specific number of FTEs or full-time employees. And so to exceed that, they would need to come back to the board in the same way they come back for the dollar amount. So yeah, that is a
the-
possibility it would require.
So the dollar amounts is maybe not the issue, but it's more of us approving the position.
The authorized position.
Okay.
Yes.
That's something we can work on.
Yes.
There's also a function of people in those positions may not have an MLS as well. So what do we do with those people that are in those positions? Because everyone that's in the PSA position doesn't have an MLS to be moved to that. So what do we do with that person? They can't lose their job.
And Mr. Hill, I think you said that in terms of children's librarians, because that's your concern, right, Mr. Lane, that all of those positions are filled, right? They're not filled with people who have certain certification.
Yes, but they are filled. They're filled
Right.
with people who may not have an MLS, but they're still serving as children's
Right.
reference or librarians in that position.
So we do have people who are serving the children
That is correct.
in the branches.
But the FTE budget line was based on a fully qualified person in that position, right?
Or it was based on the PSA.
Was that from the prior year, I guess?
That was from the prior year.
Okay.
But they are filled by either a PSA or someone who didn't know that. Okay.
And why would we want to have PSAs over, say, a MLS children's librarian? Like, what would be the reason?
What's your question again?
What's the reasoning for having a PSA fill in for a children's librarian?
Well, some of it, for instance, Martin Del Brightwood, I was the East Region Area Resource Manager at the time. We ran that position 3 times. We couldn't get an MLS person. So we downgraded it to a PSA. That's why. Sometimes you can't get a person. Everybody doesn't want to work at every location. We couldn't get anybody for that. I seen that first 3 times I had to run that. It was very interesting as well.
Any other?
So I'd like to direct us back to the motion at hand.
Absolutely. If there are no more questions, no more discussion, we can have a roll call to approve resolution 49 for transfer between classification and accounts and other services.
Mr. Biederman,
Approve?
Mr. Lane,
Abstain.
Dr. Matada,
Yay.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne,
Nay.
Dr. White,
Approve.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved. The motion carries. Moving on to resolution 50, 2023 classification, transfer between classifications and accounts for the CAO position.
This resolution is located on page 61 of the board documentation. This transfer in the operation fund is to move funds within the CEO department's budget to fund the contract for the CAO. This transfer has no impact of the total budget for 2023 as the funds are moving from one account to another. On page 62 reflects the transfer for the 1 month charge for the final month for the CAO position, which is for the month of July 2023, in amount of $15,833.33. This was approved in the Finance Committee.
Great. This resolution received a favorable recommendation from the Finance Committee. Is there a second to this favorable recommendation?
Second.
Any discussion?
What is the, I guess, what are we billing for this month? Like, what is the invoice say?
For this month,
Yeah.
the month of July, I won't get this.
I mean, whatever we're just, what is the last month's invoice say then? Sorry.
I don't have that invoice in front of me at this time.
Okay.
If you send me an email, I will send it out to the board.
Right, then I can't approve it at this time. Thank you.
This is for this month.
Right.
Yeah,
Just want to see continuity of the work.
I think this was approved by the Finance Committee.
Was, yes.
So maybe Dr. Payne may have a comment on that.
My comment is this the last time we'll have to do this?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the work has already been done.
Well, she has until the end of the month.
Yeah. Okay. But the Finance Committee did approve it.
Right.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? Is there a question outstanding, Dr. White? No. Okay, so then we'll move forward to have a roll call to approve resolution 50, 2023.
Mr. Biederman,
Approve?
Mr. Lane,
No?
Dr. Matada,
Approved.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne,
Approved.
Dr. White,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
The motion carries. Moving on, it's the finance show tonight. Resolution 51, 2023, insurance resolution. Ms.
This is-
Campbell?
Yeah, this is on page 64 of the board document. The background for this resolution is the Indianapolis Marion County Public Library contracts for insurance coverage for its risk and various loss exposures related to tort, theft, or damage and destruction of assets, errors and omission, job-related illnesses, injuries to employees, natural disasters, cybersecurity incidents, IMCPL contracts with an insurance broker, Gallagher, who analyzes and recommends coverage. The goal is to ensure that settled claims that from these risks do not exceed the commercial insurance coverage. The IMCPL risk management requires disclosure for financial statements. Purposes included that there are no significant reduction in insurance by major categories of risk. Our insurance broker Gallagher recommends using Travelers, which is our current carrier. Again, for the 23-24 renewal period, the insurance was last bid for the 2019-2020 year, and the Travelers quote was significantly less than the two other carriers. Another factor is staying with travelers is the importance of building relationship history with insurance carriers. A small portion, approximately 8.1% based on premium of 2023-24 of the library's overall insurance provided through other carriers, AIG Company for AD&D coverage, BCS Insurance Company for cyber liability coverage, Continental Casual Company CNA for the director and officers liability and employment practice liability coverage, as we recommend staying with these carriers as well. The premium increased from last year due to property and coverage values increase to reflect inflations, increase in square footage coverage, and requesting more robust limit on crime policy. On page 65, you will see the reflection of the new premiums, which has approximately 8% increase to a total of $400,861. The fiscal impact overall is an increase compared to amount paid for prior year's coverage. The total cost for 2021-22, including the broker fee, was $328,508. The amount for 22-23 is $365,145. And the amount that we're asking for approval for 23-24 is $400,061, which is an increase of $31,443, approximately 8% higher than last year. And this amount would be paid out of operating funds. And this was approved in our finance committee.
Great. Resolution 51-2023 regarding insurance resolution received a favorable recommendation from the Finance Committee. Is there a second to this favorable recommendation?
Second.
Is there any discussion about Resolution 51? Hearing none. Ms. Gilbert, please call the roll.
Mr. Biederman,
Approve?
Mr. Lane,
Approve.
Dr. Matata,
Approved.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne,
Approved.
Dr. White,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
The motion carries.
That is the end of the treasury report.
Thank you,
Thank you.
ladies,
Very much.
Thanks, Lolita.
for your labor tonight.
Made it through the fight.
Working hard.
We'll move on to item number 7, the Diversity Policy and Human Resources Committee. Mr. Biederman.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to invite up our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, Kim, who's going to give us an update about the DEI Training Initiative. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Welcome is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Kim Ewers, and I'm the DEI officer, and I am going to present the DEI Training Initiative update. Next slide, please. So our DEI Training Initiative prioritizes training staff to improve interactions with diverse audiences. And we do this in 3 ways. The first way is to offer annual system-wide training. And an example of this, it's an older example, but we did an all-staff book read. All employees read stamped Anti-Racism and You by Jason Reynolds and Ibram Kendi. Jason Reynolds held a live webinar during our staff day, and then the library facilitated group discussions that took place to debrief about what we learned. This training allowed our organization to learn and grow together. The next way we offer training is through annual competency. Staff have 8 competencies that range from customer service to work ergonomics, safety, active shooter training. So we have one incorporated, which is the DEI 101 training. And then the third way is individual training. So from time to time, I'll see something that might look interesting and fit what we need for our training. And I will send an email out. And if staff have time to take the training, then they can sign up. They can work with their manager to sign up. Next slide, please. So the first training that we offer is racial equity training. And this training is a 2-day training educating attendees about structural racism Majority of our current staff have attended this training. About, I think I have the number here. It's about, this is from 21 and 2022, but about 336. But that number changes based on who leaves, who retires, who's, So, but majority of our staff have completed this training. Going forward, this will be mandatory for executive and management staff. Unfortunately, there were funding limitations from our typical funding sources for this training. The library will incorporate funds into the DEI budget for 2024 to carry this training on for all staff. Next slide, please. The next training we offer is child advocate training, and it's a one-day training initially reserved for hourly staff and public service associates. But going forward, the group removed from REI, which is public service librarians, will be included in this training. And this is temporary until we can get our funding. Child Advocates offers their training, which is interrupting racism, and it moves individuals to action to stop racism. We pivoted because of the funding limitations again to add librarians to this group to continue our DEI training. We have to fulfill our DEI training initiative, which was a result of the DEI plan that we established. Next slide, please. And finally, we have Movement of 10,000, or you will hear it called Movement 10K. It is created by the Indianapolis Foundation, Central Indiana Community Foundation. It is one of our current system-wide DEI training initiatives, in addition to racial equity training and child advocates. It's virtual training that consists of about 25 hours of content divided into 6 learning pathways. Quoted from their website, Movement of 10,000 is a digital platform advancing racial equity through learning, behavior change, action, and engagement. As part of our local commitment to racial equity in our community, participating agencies of Indianapolis Government Alliance on Race and Equity have agreed to implement this training at our organizations. For some staff, this will be a refresher. It's a baseline training for newer staff, but it serves as a refresher for our staff who have had REI or child advocates training some time ago. And it is mandatory for all staff. The library will complete another climate improvement survey in the future, which will provide feedback on where we are now versus where we were. We are hopeful that the library has made progress through our commitment to offer training to our employees. The main points I will leave you with this evening is that other funding options will be investigated, and the library will incorporate funds in our 2024 budget for DEI trainings. The trainings will allow staff to feel comfortable having continuous conversations and empowered to address systemic racism and other social injustices. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Ewers. Are there any questions or comments?
Oh, I think that's great. I was wondering if the trainings cover a lot of the book ban issues that are coming down that affect LGBTQ people, as well as the Black neighborhoods and Latino neighborhoods as well.
Majority of them do, yes, in some facet. There is something I've had my eye on that covers book banning, but I just need to attend that training to see how much, how it flows, how it works, and then maybe look at the cost of it. But I already have a, yeah.
Dr. Blas.
Thank you. I have a question on, you said you're planning on doing a climate study again. Will that sort of measure if this training is having an effect on the behavior of the people? Sort of changing the behavior to a positive behavior. And what you're trying to do with the training.
Yes, that's not the ultimate goal, but yes, it will look at where we were and where we are now. There may be some people who have not, or may have be of a different opinion, and that's okay. But we would hope that we have seen change over the course of our training, in a positive direction, or an uncomfortable direction, because everybody is not comfortable with this topic. So at least if they're comfortable enough to even start asking questions, that is an improvement to me.
Or is there another tool to measure
We can look
the
at other
outcomes
tools,
of
yes,
the training?
definitely. We can look at other tools. That each training has its own measurement tool, so we can look at those as well.
I'm talking more relational and social than pre and post test.
More relational. That's always the tricky part.
Because that's where it boils down to.
Yes, that's what, yes.
Yeah.
And that is what DEI professionals, I meet with them and we always talk about how do you measure that? So, yes.
What do you, or have you decided on the timing of the survey?
Not at this moment, no. We still have to discuss that.
We did talk about trying to have it before the.
Okay.
Yeah, just one quick question. Surveys have their limited effects to be able to determine what is developing around DEI. Have you considered having some different forms of quantitative and qualitative ways to determine our effectiveness and our movement?
I do not, but I would love some help with that.
When we originally proposed the climate improvement survey and process, it wasn't just a survey. It was a process by which we would collect lots of forms of data. And so we'll be glad to give you some additional information about different ways to collect climate improvement data.
These are all great
Glad to
questions.
work.
Thank you. I would love that. Thank you.
And just for clarification, Dr. Murtada, there was additional collection of qualitative data in the last climate improvement process. Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions, discussion?
Kim, is that mainly what your job? Is there anything else you do beside the train? I know that takes a lot of time, a lot. Is there anything else you want to report to us that your department does? And you may not be prepared to do that.
I'm not, but I
didn't
can
mean
just
to
kind of,
catch you off guard.
it's okay.
Because I know you do a lot.
I do a lot. It kind of all falls together. I lead the DICE committee, so we have monthly meetings. I network with other DEI officers. I attend monthly GARE meetings. We have our own strategic goals that we have to meet. I meet with the Urban Library Council. There's a DEI group there.
The Urban Library Council?
Yes, yes. There's more.
That's enough.
Okay.
I didn't mean.
The majority of it is not just training.
No.
It's very strategic level type of duties most of the time, and working on a DEI plan, things like that.
Yeah.
And I think I heard that from someone that you also look at for like diverse vendors or community partners to work with. Is that correct?
Yes, so there are librarians who will reach out to me and ask me if I know people. So I will recommend vendors to them for their programming. It's just a matter of, connecting with people in the community and learning about what they offer. So lots of time talking to people.
I just want to follow up, but are you also involved with the diversity impact sort of calculation or analysis that goes into every proposal that we have starting to do?
Yes,
Okay.
so that is something new, but yes, we are working on that. Yes.
And then I want to point out, Dr. Payne said you're a department of how many?
One.
One. We gotta keep that in mind and also think about that as we plan for the budget. From my perspective, we know a budget is a list of your priorities. And we've been talking about this for a couple of years. And I do think that we ought to bear this in mind as we look at the budget for upcoming year.
Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Because what you put into there shows if it's a priority or not. Amen, that.
And I also want to say third or whatever that, especially with the pressures that we were talking about this earlier, the pressures that we're getting from the Supreme Court
Yes.
and other spaces.
We're gonna get you some space.
Oh, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
But there's also intersectionality in regards to the work with the social worker. Because the issues of race, gender, intersectionality also play themselves out. And in our climate improvement processes, we have to think about how those things come together, social work, along with the technology and our great presentation that came from Robert in regards to our shipping and receiving department and the great work that they've done. They've been very responsive to issues of equity. Those are the kinds of things that are intersectional and they play a big important role in what you're doing. So thank you. And as we look at the kinds of things that only have one person or a team of one or two people, we also provide interns opportunities, and you're supervising interns and you're supervising people that are not a part of our paid staff. So tremendous accolades to you and to Yana, to our folks in shipping who are also doing a great deal of work, and how those all come together and improving our climate.
You're welcome.
Great. If there are no more comments, thank you, Ms. Ewers. Thank you for the report and look forward to hearing from you around budget time next month. That report you're playing. Move on to the Facilities Committee, Dr. White.
Yes, is Roberta here? Or Roberta? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roberta has some information pertaining to the resolution that we are bringing for your approval this evening. So Roberta, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I'll take the first slide, please. Yes, okay. So what we want to do today is present an opportunity to recognize a very special little boy in our Glendale branch library. And so there's a family, Katie Strader, Wood and Cy Wood. They approached us earlier this year because they lost their son Harrison unexpectedly at age 17 months in April. And so what I passed out to all of you are the seed packets that they gave out at his memorial service. The family really wanted you to have those. And Harrison, the library was his happy place. He visited the Glendale Library regularly. They read lots of books at home. They got bunny bags at the library, and reading was just a really important part of his everyday life. Next slide. And here are some pictures of Harrison enjoying books at home and at the library. Again, his parents really wanted you to have these photos. Next slide, please. So we received a tremendous outpouring of generosity. We had over 250 donors contribute about $60,000 in memory of Harrison. And in my experience, I've been with the Library Foundation 20 years. We have other staff members who've been in fundraising. We've never seen this magnitude in terms of the number of donations. I mean, in a typical year, we may get a total of about 13 or 14 donations. So you can think about what a huge percentage that is of this. And the use of funds here is actually determined as of this morning, since the funding was not needed for the branch construction because of the bond process. And we had a lot of conversations with the facilities department about this and other areas. What we decided to do, and the family signed off on this, is to use the funding primarily to purchase bunny bags and books that would begin at Glendale, but would eventually make their way throughout the library system. And the library's outreach services department requested, I think, about $100,000 for bunny bags this year. And the reason being is that the cash for bunny bags and books allows the staff to pick out. We're really intentional about book selection so that they can pick books with diverse characters. And so it's actually has a pretty significant DEI impact from that angle. They'll start out at Glendale, but eventually these books will float through the whole library system and they could end up at daycare centers or other places throughout the city. And we are going to be notifying the donors to let them know about this proposed use of fund and give anybody who has a question about it the opportunity to change that. Let us know. So next slide, please. So we've identified some areas in the Glendale Library that would be named for the family. We worked with the facilities department to do this. There is a window seat, and then there are these little activity nooks, which are little circles in the wall that little friends can curl up in and with a book. And so we are going to be, if this is approved this evening, we will be working with the family and the facilities department to develop appropriate signage for Harrison Strader Wood. And the signage would be installed prior to opening, and then we would, talk to them once we have the grand opening for the date of the new library. We'll talk to them about how they want to be present at that event, or if they want to do something afterwards as a dedication. So those are the things that we have in mind. We've really been very pleased and so grateful for the support we've already received from the library's facilities department, the library's executive committee, and the facilities committee. So I just want to thank them all, especially the facilities committee and some members of my team who've really worked with the family and worked out the details to make sure they're getting their needs met. And I just want to ask you if you would consider approving this as a full board so that we can make these parents very, very happy and we make this official. So thank you. I'll take any questions, of course.
Thank you, Roberta. One question just for, I think I know what the bunny bags are. Could you just describe that?
I thought about this on the way in the car. I should have brought one with, but there probably are some in here.
Yeah.
So bunny bags are these canvas tote bags, and they're filled with books. There are different types of bunny bags. They kind of started proliferating like bunnies. Oh, Shale's getting one. Thank you. We have
the one that has the Latino bag.
Yeah, they're in Spanish, they're in English, and then there are also baby bunny bags. And they're called bunny bags because they're named after the Rosemary Wells book, Read to Your Bunny, and One Day Your Bunny Will Read to You. And that's how we came up. So these are available for patrons to borrow at all the branches. And they're also when the library goes out to visit the child care centers, it's what the library will drop off and leave there. So they float through the whole system. So these will start at Glendale because that's the particular interest of the donor, but then they'll eventually, and the donor understands, they float out and could end up anywhere.
Thank you.
Moved.
Okay, resolution 52, approval of the naming opportunity for the Glendale branch window seat, activity wall, and 2 book nooks in the children's area received a favorable recommendation from the facilities committee. Is there a second, Dr. Payne? Dr. Murtada. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call.
Mr. Beederman,
Approve?
Mr. Lane,
Approve.
Dr. Matada,
Approved.
Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne,
Approved.
Dr. White,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
The motion carries.
Just point of
And
personal.
Did you get the
privilege.
Spanish one?
I got.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they proliferate just like real bugs.
Yes. They're wonderful.
When I also, or when I. So this is a picture book bag, and then we also have the baby bunny book bags. That makes sense. And these are all more books. Have the kids to eat them, and then these are all in Spanish.
I love it.
So they're fine free. They're fine free. Of course, they were fine free before we were fine free. And our wonderful delivery people and outreach departments also deliver these to daycare centers throughout the city. And so they give books for kids to actually put their hands on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And schools.
And school.
And-
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I would just like for the board to commend Roberta and her staff for all the fine work they've done in this particular project. I done a great job, Roberta, and I know the family is going to be very, very pleased, and we're looking forward to this dedication.
Thank you. And I just have to give the credit to my team. We have a very talented major gifts officer, and she's been on the front lines and she's masterful at working. And I also just want to say that we had a memorial situation a couple of years ago that I got to work with Stephen on when he was still the special collections librarian. And that was very rewarding as well. And he was excellent. So I think just feeling the love of this group will really be a real lift to this family and comfort them. So I can't wait to email them. In fact, I'll probably.
So you were greatly positively impressed and influenced by Stephen?
I'm influenced by you, Roberta, honestly.
We were like Fred and Ginger on that. And
Okay.
we really just tag teamed and worked together real well. So
Working with donors, going through the grieving process is just very delicate, and I
It
think
takes
you always
time.
handle it so well.
Takes talent.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve.
Now, Roberta, are you going to go away? You're going to come back and give the foundation? Well, you're up. No, you're up now. Roberta?
She heard. you.
Yeah, yes, you're right now. We planned it back to back for you so you can. So the Library Foundation update, which is item number 9 on our agenda.
I said, I just want to find this. Minutes. Give me just a moment. I don't want to forget anything. Excuse me. Here we go. We have a short update this month, but we will have some more things to talk about in the near future. But again, we gave some kudos earlier in the meeting to summer reading program staff. And again, we are just so proud and to support that. And we really want to thank all library staff members who were involved in making that program possible. We have 148 donors who gave gifts last month. I do want to point out some of the larger gifts that we've received in case you should be able to help us thank them. And they are Everwise Credit Union, which used to be Teachers Credit Union, Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, Meyer, the Nicholas H. Noyes Memorial Foundation, and Sapient Capital. And also in July, we provided about $690,000 to the library. And some of the things that we supported were Pathway to Literacy, concert series, CBLC programming, On the Road to Reading, and the Marion County Internet Library. So those just a very brief update. And in a bit, I'll have some more updates I'd like to share with the board. We had a DEI audit a couple of months ago. Our board is still in the process of debriefing it. And after we do, I'll give you all some information about some of our major findings and what we'll be doing. It was very positive experience and gave us some good pointers on what we can do to be better. And the other thing is, I know I do have some personal meetings coming up with some of you. I'd like to meet with all of you at some point in the near future, just to get better acquainted, build relationships, and share a couple upcoming projects that we have that I think you'll be really excited about for the 150th anniversary of the library. So that's all I have. I want to thank Ray for being our representative and all of you for your support of the foundation and the library.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to the report of the CEO, Mr. Hill.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President, board members. Before you is the confirming resolution 53, 2023. It is the monthly confirmatory resolution related to finance, travel, and personnel matters occurring between each board meeting. This resolution is the typical form which is before you each month. I or other EC staff would be happy to answer any questions of the board, but would otherwise ask for your approval of this resolution.
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 53, 2023 regarding finances, personnel, and travel?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Resolution 53 has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote to approve Resolution 53.
Mr. Biederman,
Approve.
Mr. Lane,
Approve.
Dr. Matata, Dr. Palacio,
Approve.
Dr. Payne, Dr. White,
Approve.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll continue on. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and go through my CEO report. Good evening again. The staff of the Indianapolis Public Library continues to focus on supporting lifelong learning in the city of Indianapolis. System-wide communications, we continue to hold meetings with staff at branch locations. Sorry. We continue to hold meetings as staff at branch locations as well as departments. In June, the executive committee, we met at Fort Harrison to take a tour of the new branch. And then we met at the Decatur branch as part of our EC meetings. We also just completed our town hall, the second of 4 on July the 19th. Juvenile services, some of the featured programs include summer and youth programming is all about summer reading program. Reading is like riding a bike. The more you ride, the farther you can go. This program keeps kids exercising their reading muscles while school is out. As of July 1st, over 19,000 kids and over 3,000 adults are actively participating by logging reading time, not just registered, but actively reading. The Indianapolis community as a whole has read a total of over 13 million minutes, keeping us on track to meet our community reading goal of 16 million minutes read by the end of this summer. Throughout the summer, there are workshops and storytelling programs that provide participants with opportunities to have fun and stimulate curiosity. Programs include woodworking, robotics, art, yoga, performance, and more. More than 2,500 children have attended a summer program so far, with more opportunities throughout July. A unique aspect of the program is that we encourage participants to give back to the community. There are book donation bins at each library location to donate new or gently used books to brighten learning at local organizations that serve homeless children by providing academic support. We have already received more than 1,000 books from our patrons in support of Bright Lane Learning. Incentives push many struggling readers to keep reading during summer vacation. This summer's incentives include passes to the Children's Museum, Haunted House, tickets to the Indianapolis Indians game, Idle Joy Museum, and free pizza from Lou Malnati's Pizzeria, and of course, books. Adults can join the summer reading program and earn tickets for drawings to win one of the grand prizes, like a one-night staycation for 2. Some adult feature programs. Speaking of adult summer reading program, patrons have completed more than 2,890 activities in July as part of the challenge. Some of the most popular activities include visiting an NDPL branch you've never seen before, touring one of NDPL library locations, and listening to an episode from our More Than a Place podcast. We're happy to share that as of July 7th, more than 6,200 patrons are enrolled in adult summer reading, and 3,536 have logged reading minutes. 1,134 patrons completed the challenge. If you are participating in adult summer reading, there's still time to complete activities on your own. Join one of our writing workshops at branches, learn gardening tips through a seed library program. Try out fishing or look for an opening in one of our popular adult programs, landscape painting, painting party, and printmaking. But please note, many of our programs have a wait list. View the calendar at ndpl.org/calendar for registration details. In the fall, NDPL will host the Meet an Author, Be an Author Fair to connect local authors, and aspiring writers. Applications for book fair participants open July 3rd, and we already have 30 applicants. Submit a form today to get involved and save the date to attend the fair's writing workshop. On July 8th, the Central African Festival highlighted communities from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, Burundi. Celebrating Central Africa is significant to the city of Indianapolis as we have a growing population of Central African immigrants, especially from the DRC due to displacement. The event shared Central African cultures through music, dance, and crafts, as well as stories from Central African neighbors who now call Indianapolis home. We kick off the event with a Burundi drum performance by the Dayton Ngoma Sound. Later, Dr. David Banagay talked about Central Africa. Kizito Karina, a Rwandan genocide survivor and founder of Peace Center for Forgiveness and Reconciliation, brought genocide awareness to the event. This time together provided an opportunity for local support agencies to share their services. We had over 150 patrons who attended the program. The library's immigrant outreach team also connected with several partner organizations in June. In collaboration with the International Center, guests from North Africa toured Central Library. Their goal was to understand how the library connects with youth and immigrant community and to share new ideas at visitors' respective organizations. Robin Kelly and Brandy Winston conducted the tour, and members of the programming department hosted a panel to answer questions about library services. We also supported the Haitian Association of Indiana with its first youth summer camp at John Wesley Free Methodist Church. NDPL donated 60 books in Haitian Creole for the children to connect with their heritage and language. In the digital inclusion space, we offered 62 digital literacy programs to adults in June with a total attendance of 214 patrons. Our most popular offerings were from the Summer Tech Explorer series for smartphones and tablets. Library Explorers allows patrons to discover how to use the library's online resources. We also offer a smartphone explorer class where they can try out apps that help them explore the natural world through AI-assisted plant and bird identification, apps and augmented reality stargazing tools. And that completes my verbal report. And then next, I'm sorry, questions? Okay. I'm just trying to get to where I am on my next one. The next one will have a presentation by Deb Lambert, the ALA conference.
Hello, Ms. Lambert.
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to apologize for my attire. I am working at the Fort Bend branch as we work on stocking the collection. We have our first huge delivery of 35,000 books tomorrow. So we're having a large team of people throughout the system to help us shelve those items. So I wanted to give a report about ALA attendance by NDPL employees, as was requested at the last board meeting. There were 12 attendees. 8 of them went for the full conference of 5 days, and then 4 of them went for just the 2-day exhibits. We asked each attendee to let us know 2 takeaways that they brought back from the conference. Otherwise, this would be all night. And I'm going to talk about those themes briefly, but in order to give it full justice, please take a look at the presentation in your packs and read those reports from each of those employees. So the first one, Charlie Kane is a public services librarian at Central Library, and he's responsible for the sheet music collection there. And he was excited to find a library database called Rock's Back Pages that he's like us to try and see if it's going to be a good fit for our community. And the other thing is that he attended a few sessions about fighting book bans. He learned a lot and is going to use some of those in his personal life in addition to what we do here at the library. The next person is Emily Thomas, a public services librarian from the Nora branch. And she also there were a lot of sessions about book bans at this year's ALA. And she said that she was surprised at the large community of support that libraries are experiencing against book banning. And then she talked about gaining confidence by being exposed to a lot more vendors of programs and a lot more resources for her to call on for her programming duties. And then Kim Ewers, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, who's here tonight, talked about, went to a program that made an impact on her that is about serving the dementia community. And she also went to a program about understanding land acknowledgements, that it's not simple just to do a land acknowledgement. They're asking libraries or institutions to employ Native Americans from those communities as a priority rather than just doing land acknowledgements. I hope I got that right. Okay, good. Next person is Kirsten Weaver. Oh, good, you're following along. I forgot that part. Kirsten Weaver is our teen program specialist through the PDA department at Central Library. And she took away some really good information from Dungeons and Dragons program presentation by the San Francisco Public Library. She was pretty excited about the way they trained and mentored teens to actually run the games and then to turn those into resume writing activities and transferable skills, job skills. And then the other thing she talked about was a new social media platform, which I think is mostly used for gaming at this point, but libraries are starting to take advantage of Twitch to do live programming online, reaching a whole new community of users in the library. And then next we have Kirsten Boland, a public services librarian at Central. And she talked about a program she attended involving climate change and its effect on mental health challenges. And that talks about what libraries can be doing to address this. And it talked about things like the LEED certifications that we're doing in our libraries, recycling programs, books in the collection about these issues, but reach out and combine those two topics for the community. And then she went to a session on understanding cultural humility and how she wants to employ that going forward in her everyday life and at work. And then the next is Nell German at Public Services Librarian at the Spades Park branch. And Nell talked about promoting diverse artists. She already had this idea in mind about promoting diverse artists in the community through art clubs and exhibits for children. And she got lots of ideas at programs she attended for that supported her thoughts on that. And then she, I think, attended the same D&D program for teens, but you never know, there might have been more than one, but she, works with children and teens as well. So that made an impression on her. And Nichelle Hayes, our manager for the Center for Black Literature and Culture at Central Library, focused her time there on BCALA, the Black Caucus for the American Library Association activities, through programs that she put on and hosted and events that she hosted and attended and mentoring programs. So she was very busy there. And I didn't hear from her about this, but I summarized what, was in the LA program for that. And then Shelley Rich is the next person who is the manager for the Learning Curve at Central Library. And book bans are a very big part of her work at Central Library and the Children's Library. So she took away this talking point about book bans. And rather than talking about titles, specific titles saying, they're banning this book, what we need to focus on is talking about what our community is losing by the loss of that book, such as when you ban this title, our readers are losing access to accurate age-appropriate information about puberty and other important topics. So we do a lot of programs around Banned Books Week and everything where we talk about read all these books, but we don't talk about why, what are we losing for those? And then she attended a session about building design as she's working on envisioning the redesign of the curve. And one of the points that she took out of it was making space for specific behavioral challenges that they see through their experience at the curve every day now, such as people who complain about how noisy it is, making sure that we create a space for families that want a quiet space in their design. So thinking about the challenges they're having now and how can they incorporate that into design. And then getting into the people who went for just the exhibits for a short time. Adam Parsons, our director of facilities, went and this was his first ALA conference to learn about all the vendors that are out there and how large and complex the library ecosystem is, and all the opportunities to learn new things out there. And then he also focused on automated materials handling vendors and got to know some more of them. And one made an impression on him that offered a very compact option for AMH sorters that would fit into other smaller locations. So I went as well to the exhibits, and there was, they're focused on looking for DEI vendors and world language vendors and finding specific titles that we don't have in the collection and taking that back to my team to make sure that they're aware of these sources for diverse materials. Our children's librarian, Janet, I can't tell her anything new. She's already got them all. But I think our other selectors will find some new vendors and sources for them to do their selections from. And then I made a connection with a very specific person who was doing an exhibit booth, a specific author from IPS Schools, Casey Taylor, and made a connection with her. And we're acquiring her books for the collection as a local author. We also invited her to the Meet an Author, Be an Author program. We're hoping to see her there. She also presented at Black Expo here in Indianapolis. And then I went to a program called Intentionally Diversifying Strategies for Building Collections That Matter, which was in the exhibit halls. And I heard from many of our peer libraries, large public libraries, New York Public and San Francisco and others that are experiencing the same thing that we're experiencing, and hearing about ideas about how to address diversity in the collection, and that we all need to band together and continue having this conversation with our vendors, with our publishers about bringing the diversity of collection building up. And then Mary Barr, our communications director, also attended her first ALA conference. And it was an introduction after only being here, 6 weeks, Mary? But it was at that time, it was only, a month, learning a lot about all the options that are out there for customizing and innovating and enhancing our communications, especially through our website and our digital presence. And then she talked about learning what a great opportunity is to network with key vendors and peers at ALA. And then the last person I want to talk about is Montoya Barker, who is our special collections librarian for the Indianapolis Special Collections Room. And she did work at the Black Caucus booth. She went there specifically to help the Black Caucus of American Library Association with their presence at ALA. And she said she had a great experience working the booth and having opportunities for outreach and engagement with peers throughout the conference. And then the last thing she did was as an official NASA liaison. I don't know if you knew that about Montoya, but she's learned about new programs that NASA is bringing to public libraries, and that there are 25 public libraries that have NASA connections that bring programs for STEM studies, projects, and research. And she's got one lined up for this coming year. So it was a great conference for everybody, I think. I'll try to answer questions about the other folks, but any questions?
Thank you for that. This is the second meeting in a row we've heard from the ALA experience, and it was very informative. So I appreciate that. One of the things that I want to bring up, I've been scheduling one-on-one meetings with other board members, and in my meeting with Stephen, one of the things that he talked about in terms of things that we as a board should start to look at is going to these kinds of library development opportunities. And so I hope that we will start to think about that. Also, as we plan for next year, as we look at our strategic plan process, and even if we need to pay attention to the budget to make sure that we can support board members in expanding our understanding of the industry that we are serving. So thank you for that. It's very helpful.
May I mention that in 2024, the Public Library Association Conference will be in Columbus, Ohio. So it'll be very close and a great opportunity for you to go.
Road trip. One other question for you. Who would you say are our peer libraries?
Oh, gosh. So it's going to be large urban libraries with a central library, multiple branches around the 20 level, and a similar budget and similar population.
We know offhand who.
Wake County, North Carolina, which is where Charlotte, I think.
Charlotte
is.
Mecklenburg.
Mecklenburg is a peer. And I think that you can see the peers in the CIP study, and I'm sorry, I don't have them all memorized.
Columbus, I think St. Louis, Portland.
Great. Okay, just wondered, you mentioned it a couple of times, and starting to think about how do we learn from.
I wanted to, Deb, I heard you mention the Black Caucus of the association. Isn't Michelle the president?
She is currently the president, yes, and that's why she had such a heavy lift this year at the conference.
Okay. So, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I definitely want to piggyback off what you said, President Tribble, and that I thought the ALA was very beneficial. I got to go to some sessions that were geared towards board members and some that were like relevant to my committee work and facilities. So I thought it was very beneficial, and you get a lot of free books.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Deb Lambert. Next, we have a presentation on the NDPL Snapshot Day by Mr. Mike Williams, Manager, Special Projects.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
President Tribble, members of the board, Mr. Hill, and of course, our wonderful audience here at the Irvington Branch Library. They say you can't go home again, but over 20 years ago, I had the privilege of being the branch manager who opened this facility. So sometimes you do get to go home at least for a visit. And it's a wonderful facility still. As past president of the Indiana Library Federation, I would also remind you that because of the library's institutional membership, you all have a membership, and there will be a trustee thread this year at the ILF Annual Conference in November. So I would encourage you to look forward to that as well. You don't even have to travel because it's going to be at Union Station. Since the earliest day of the library, we have measured our success. Two of the key indicators that we have measured are door count and circulation. And we've measured those since the beginning. Our methods of measuring have become increasingly sophisticated from the old days when occasionally such counts would be lost because a rat ate the beans. Literally, you had a can of beans and you put a bean in a little container for each person or book that moved that day. A lot more computerized now, but we're getting there. And as part of Snapshot Day, I want to report on just a couple statistical measures, door count and circulation, namely. I'll put on my glasses so I can see my notes a little better. Slide 2, Katie. Across the system, we welcomed 8,980 patrons on April 10th of this year. That is the first day of our 150th year of operation, day one. That is nearly the capacity of Hinkle Fieldhouse. Imagine, we filled Hinkle Fieldhouse just with folks visiting the Irvington branch, all of our other locations on April 10th, single Monday in mid-April. Next. Unlike those bygone days in 1873, when people arrived by foot or by horse-drawn carriage to use the library, we now also offer many virtual services. One of those, Libby, our overdrive front door, if you will, saw 4,479 users on Snapshot Day. Yes, ebook users are about half of our physical users. That's, take a breath on that one. That's a long way from where we started circulating ebooks with this cranky old device, which was a Rocket ebook that we piloted circulating at Irvington shortly after we opened here. A pretty dreadful device, really, but it was state of the art in its day, and our library was lucky enough to get to circulate the things. The times have changed, the patrons' usage patterns have changed, but we do our best to keep up with them. Slide 4. Now we get to some circulation figures. For me, I started as a circulation clerk. So circulation has always been the lifeblood of the public library as a measure from my perspective. Patrons checked out 18,172 physical items on April 10th. That's enough to put a book on every single seat in Gainbridge Fieldhouse and still have a couple book loads on a book truck of books left over. That's a lot of stuff. Number 5, go back to the virtual side. Patrons also borrowed 6,760 downloadable books, audiobooks, and magazines via Libby. That day, That means 37% more items were checked out in electronic form on top of those 18,000 physical things. Again, wow. Number 6. What goes out must come back. Staff were busy checking in physical materials. 11,649 returned items to be exact. Number 7. 2,578 new holds were created on Monday, April 10th. That's the equivalent of everybody sitting in a seat at Old National Center placing a hold. Again, that's a big impact on a lot of people. Number 8. Staff have to deal with all those holds sooner or later. 1,963 items on hold were looked for on April 10th. And we move on to number 9. All around town, where Brad's delivery team takes us, we have shared system partners, and we love them, and we are thrilled that we are adding more from IPS. That has been a long time coming. But that shared system also includes a couple museums, and collectively, shared system checked out 1,868 items. That's more than a book on each seat of the Circle Theater. Lots of stuff gets checked in and checked out on a daily basis. The shared system locations checked in 1,890 items. Go ahead, Katie. 299 holds were created by shared system users. Again, 128 holds were filled by shared system locations. Keep in mind, these are small locations with small book stock, so they are contributing to the extent that they are able. Next one. All those books and all those holds don't reach patrons by themselves. Brad's shipping team, and he gave you lots of statistics for a longer period of time. This is the one-day snapshot. Click, Brad, what'd you do? They sorted 5,161 items through that giant sorter at the LSC to 75 different locations. So that's all of our library locations, plus a whole bunch of the shared system locations. Next. Drivers made 27 delivery stops on that Monday. Next. Our delivery truck drivers drove 259 miles across 5 different routes to reach all the library branches in Central that day. And the bookmobiles, which you see in the picture, were also out on the road, thus bringing the library to additional users. Next. This is the CMSA slide, and it's a patron who is actually at West Indianapolis, but it illustrates the point beautifully. It takes a lot of books and a substantial sum of money to meet the demands and needs of our users. And our CMSA selection team spent $45,193 ordering 2,270 new items for our library system on April 10th. Next. We also shipped 1,165 brand new items to all of our locations that day. And everybody smiles when those new books come to the library. Next one. April 10th, 2023. Library Snapshot Day. Just a quick snapshot in time, just an ordinary day in April that's been 150 years in the making. What follows are some sincere thank yous. So we have to thank the Library Foundation. They have made our celebration of our 150th anniversary possible. As the leader of the band for the 150th anniversary committee, I want to thank all the members of that committee. These folks have worked hard to generate ideas and make wonderful suggestions as to what we can do within a limited budget to celebrate our system's accomplishments. Snapshot Day requires special thanks to a huge number of photographers across our system who voluntarily brought in their cameras, used their smartphones, documented the work of that day with their colleagues to present images that our communications team will use now and for a long time in the future to document the work that we do. And finally, I have to thank some very special people who are the data gatherers. We have lots of statistics, and frankly, they're in lots of virtual cookie jars. And it takes a lot of people to open those cookie jars and gather up these things so I can sit here and report all these facts to you in a little more than 5 minutes. Great team pulling special reports to make this information available. And that's just a very quick wrap up, just looking at a few key facts about Snapshot Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, I just have one question. What's the origin of Snapshot Day? Does that happen every year or?
It
I don't
can.
want to keep us.
We
long.
have not done Snapshot Day for more than 10 years. So that's why I just wanted this to be a focus on current statistics, because things from 10 years ago, there are some comparable measures. There are a lot that aren't anymore because business has changed. 10 years ago, how many computers did we have and how many people had to wait and how many sessions? Well, now everybody's got Wi-Fi and many people are blessed to have a smart device. They use our Wi-Fi, but they don't have to stand in line to get to a machine nearly as much as they did. So things change. We could do Snapshot Day once a month. A best practice that ALA suggests is maybe once a year. So personally, I helped engineer the 2 previous Snapshot Days that the library did years ago. I'd kind of like to see it become an annual tradition, but it's been rested for quite a while. We wanted to bring it back to celebrate our 150th. It helps give a strategic look at where we are, what we're doing. And this is just the tip of the iceberg with just a couple measures. We really should be looking at programs and displays, so much else that is a part of the library's work every single day. But in the interest of all of our time, I had to focus on just a couple things to get this in.
Okay, thanks. I hadn't heard about it before, so I appreciate it.
Right.
Any other questions?
John, I want to thank you. When you first showed me this data, I said, please bring it to the board. And part of it is because as we look at long-range planning, building in this kind of new way of looking at data and the richness that you just ended on, that we're having to look at how do we collect data in new and exciting ways. That's what you're beginning to do. Thank you so much.
You're
Awesome.
most welcome.
Thank
And
you.
correction, his name is Mike Williams.
I'll just brag on one little thing. I've been very fortunate to hire great librarians like Stephen and Montoya. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, Montoya is great.
Okay, next up is the Strategic Plan Accomplishments 2022 by Mrs. Anita Harden, Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Hill, and good evening. President Tribble and Board of Trustees. I want to thank you for allowing me to come today and bring you up to date on where we are with the strategic plan accomplishments. And I'm going to focus on the year end of 2022. Now, I personally was not here, but I heard a lot about 2022. A lot of things were accomplished. Next slide, please. So we have 7 strategic priorities that are in the strategic plan, and we based our objectives under these priorities. So I'll let you read that for a minute. I'm not going to read them to you. Okay, next slide, please. Maybe. Okay, great. The first one is racial equity. And if you're wondering about those arrows, the green upward arrows are those objectives that we accomplished in 2022. And the downward orange arrows are the ones that we did not accomplish in 2022. So the first one, excuse me, racial equity, collections diversity. And that objective was to create a more diverse collection of print materials and in the annual collection budget for African-American authors at 30%, Latinx authors at 10%, and LGBTQ plus authors at 5%. And we did not hit that in 21 or 22. In African-Americans, we achieved 17%. Latinx authors, we achieved 7.5%, and LGBTQ, we achieved 4.3%. And that's largely because of supply. We're not getting those books from the publishers. We are using a variety of publishers, but the big ones just are not producing those. And it's something that's really kind of an industry-wide issue, and other libraries have expressed frustration as well. I think we're definitely not going to hit it in 2023. And as we look towards 2024, I think it's important to hang on to this strategic priority and this objective, but we may have to look at what's reasonable. We may have to look at perhaps other portions of that change from the written book to publishing and all the steps along the way. There may be some things we could focus on defining that might help us continue the forward thrust to keep it in mind that we keep our collection as diverse as we can. The second one, apply the NDPL Racial Equity Toolkit in designing 100% of programs annually, and we did achieve that. It's a standing question, or a set of standing questions on our CAPS application. So anyone submitting a CAPS community action plan for consideration as a program has to address these issues. Thirdly, increase vendor diversity to assure 27% of annual vendor expenditures are paid to city certified XPEs, and we exceeded this goal. This is great news. We achieved 36%. That's about $7.9 million in our spend for 2022. And finally, increase staff diversity by spending 50% of the annual recruitment budget on diverse recruitment efforts. And again, another objective that we exceeded. We spent 85% of our total budget on recruitment, diverse recruitment efforts. Next slide, please. Thank you. Partnerships, we had two. And the first one is engage and collaborate with educators to create semi-annual youth-focused marketing to increase youth awareness of the library and its resources. And that was completed. The two campaigns conducted last year were summer reading and reading ready time. And secondly, create partnerships with culturally diverse community members, leaders, and organizations on at least 75% of our community action plans annually. We were close. We hit it at 70%, but that's not quite goal. An example of some of those programs that I thought were really interesting, World Language Book Club, in which immigrants and neighborhoods can enjoy and experience books written in their own languages and have those discussions. And Pathway to Literacy is another strong program that addresses adult language learners who have not received as much formal schooling in the past. Next slide, please. Digital technology inclusion. Deliver at least 600 technology and computer training sessions. Another one we exceeded. We exceeded the goal by 49%. We held 894 sessions in 2022. The second one, complete the digital inclusion roadmap by the end of 2021, and that was done, certainly. In 2022, we received funding through USAC to purchase Chromebooks and hotspots for public services. And we're also adding and did add accessibility stations. Third one, excuse me, create up-to-date space by redesigning the learning curve. And I think you've been following with facilities, all the construction that's going on. So we projected that that will be completed in 2024. So it's not going to be completed in 2023. And as you heard earlier, you supported a redesign of the bonds. So a variety of factors enter into that. So I don't see that as bad news. I think it's wonderful that we're moving forward. And finally, continue to provide high quality STEAM programs system-wide, and that was accomplished. Again, the STEAM assessment questions were included in CAPS, so that has to be addressed with any program that's going to be approved and moved forward by staff. Next slide, please. Education. Let's see, promote resource sharing between schools and NDPL through teacher and administrator outreach efforts and enhance marketing and public relations efforts, resulting in 2% annual growth in shared system circulation. And you heard earlier, we're doing so well with that. In 2022, we achieved 28%. So we exceeded that goal. Excuse me. Circulation, just to give you an idea, the number in 2022 was 401,352. The second one, identify the needs and assets of educators by administering a survey by the end of 2021. That was done. And in 2022, we provided from that 11 workshops, and those were very successful for 54 schools. Annually deliver 15 professional development sessions for educators. 9 sessions were presented in 2022. We fell short of that goal, and we are looking to work on increasing that for 2023. Next slide, please. Reading and writing. Increase community awareness and accessibility to achieve 20% of service area as active card holders. And we were short on that one. In 2022, 16% of the service area was that we provided. We provided services for 16% of the service area instead of the 20%. The service area being Marion County, of course. And the next one, increase usage of library card to 25% annually. And we achieved 38%. So again, that one was exceeded. And that certainly helped to bring in those IPS shared systems schools. And the last one, increase community awareness and accessibility, remove barriers, enhance marketing and public relations efforts, and provide excellent customer service to drive total circulation, and that's checkouts, physical and renewals to 10.5 million in 2023. We were short in 2021, 2022, and we're not going to make it in 2023. Now, one would say, is that achievable? Well, we have in the past. We've achieved, pre-pandemic, we achieved over 10.5 million. And in 2022, we hit 6.9 million. 2021 is a little more than that. Now, when we looked at the first 6 months of 2023, and we are ahead of the circulation compared to 2022 during the same time period, but it's not enough to help us to achieve that goal. Now, one might wonder, okay, so we're measuring physical after pandemic, where did we increase our electronic to offset some of that? And we did increase our electronic, but not to the level that would help us reach that. So I think going into 2024, we need to think about what it is we're trying to really drive and what might be some of the methods to do that. I think that's gonna be some very interesting conversations as you sort that out. Okay, next slide, please. Health and wellness. Increase classes to at least 15 annually. And we provided in 2022 35 classes. So again, that was a goal that we exceeded. The next one, expand the health and wellness collection by 25% by the end of 2023 through targeted collection management. And in 2022, that was another one that we fell short on. We achieved 9% in that area. Next one, deliver one system-wide health and wellness event annually with a focus on the disproportionate impact of many health issues on Black, Indigenous, Asian, Latinx, and all people of color. And that was achieved last year. The Maurice Young Community Resource Fair for the homeless event was put on, and this was presented by the Social Services Committee. The target audience was the unserved patrons, substance abuse, mentally ill, unemployed, and resources were provided to those attendees in those areas. And in addition, we also had a resource that provided information on health insurance, and 200 individuals attended that event. So we felt like that was pretty successful. And the last one, connect with community health partners to promote healthy living and resources. And that was, we developed 20 partnerships, and we felt like that was pretty successful. Next slide. And our final strategic priority, and that's financial literacy. Expand online classes to at least 15 annually. And we provided 47 classes. So that's another one that was exceeded. The next one, expand immigrant and refugee financial literacy programming to at least 20 class sessions annually. We did not achieve that in 21 or 22, but we're really making an effort to get that done in 2023, and I believe that we can do that. Expand financial collection by 25% by the end of 2023 through targeting collection management, and we were short on that. We were at 10% refreshed. Next slide, please. So some thoughts about what we did in 2022. I wanted to just go over a few things. In 2021, we achieved 36% of the objectives, and we did not achieve 64%. In 2022, we achieved 60%. We did not achieve 40%. So it's kind of a flip. And what that says to me, especially as I look at 2023 going forward, is that 2021 was kind of the first year. It was the first year of the plan, and it was kind of a building year for the plan. So some processes were started late. Some processes were being developed. Some of the metrics were being put into place. So you didn't achieve as much. And we had the advantage of that in 2022. So we achieved more. In 2023, I expect that we will achieve more. So it's an upward momentum that we're seeing with the plan. Now, there are some exceptions that I mentioned, the ones that are not going to happen. And I think the thing that we need to do with that is to, and I know Dr. Matata, you are very interested in community data and making sure that we have that. I think we need to conduct community data more often than once every 5 years. I think that's something that we need to stay on top of. And I think that might help us with our thinking about, are there changes in patron behavior? Are there trends that we need to pay attention to? what's happening out there in the industry, what are some of the best practices, so that our plan is a bit more dynamic than what it currently is with the present model. And that's the way I like to look at those ones that seem on the surface impossible to achieve, to think in terms of let's discuss some ways to look at that. We still want to hang on to some of our priorities, our strategic priorities and our vision, but let's look at the way the world is going and seeing that let's select the right way to measure. And then my final observation is, as I've talked to people about what's been achieved, and there were a number of people who are involved in these plans because there's so many of them. When I talk to them, it's real apparent to me, and as I've looked at the programs, it's real apparent to me that the changes that were being made with this plan are embedded into the workflow and are becoming systemic. So this plan is creating true change. It's not just check off this thing, move on to the next, check off this thing. No, this is something that the library staff have embraced and have put into place. And I think it's going to be enduring and lasting, and you have a great foundation to build the next plan on. So next slide, are there any questions or comments?
Thank you, Anita. Any questions?
Stephen, I know you have something you.
Then I lost it.
Oh,
But you,
okay.
I mean, you were talking about, I think it'll come back to me, but you were talking about the caps. How there are questions in there about STEAM and I think racial.
Racial equity using the toolkit.
Okay, and what are those questions and how is it prompting staff to think about those things as they develop these programs?
You always ask good, hard questions. And I tell you, what I'll have to do is share that toolkit with you, and you can see some of the questions that are asked, but it's just paying attention to the needs of the community, the diversity of the community, and just thinking through some things about how we can be inclusive and not segregate any one group with our plans. But I'd be happy to share that toolkit. I got it from Kim.
I would love to see that. And also, it did come back to me, about the 10.5 million in circulation. So was that pre-pandemic level circulation?
Pre-pandemic was greater than that, but that was the number that the plan, which I think was developed in 20 to be implemented. That's what was developed. So
And
it's interesting.
what, are there any reasons that have come about in your research on what's keeping these circulations down? And you also talked about patrons, like collecting patron data. I think it would be also important to collect the patrons we don't have yet. Like why aren't so many of the Indianapolis community coming into the libraries, and how can we reach them?
Right, exactly. I agree with you. To get that percentage up of our service area as well. And so if they're not checking out as much material, even post-pandemic, then how are they getting their information? That's another part of that question that I'm puzzled about as well. And I think that'll make for rich discussion when your group gets together to plan for the next cycle. Thank you.
I had one question. I love the way that the statistics were showing a lot of outputs and results. There was one that talked about the use of recruiting funds for diversity. And I think our goal was 50%, but we did 85. What was the return on that? Do we know, like, did the recruited employee portion increase? I'd be interested just to know what was our return on that investment? And
that's a good question.
Yeah.
That would be one to look at for sure. Thank you.
That
I wrote down
information.
that exact same question, because we're expending funds to recruit, to retain, do we retain? Your point is so important.
Right.
As we've already said in our budget discussion, when the budget finance committee was talking, we said that we're losing individuals. So are they the same individuals that we're recruiting, are retaining, et cetera? So that's the data that we've got to look at.
Mhm. Excellent, thank you.
Right. Anything else?
So, you had, one of the objectives being diversity of the content, the collections. My understanding is, like you said, it was an industry problem.
Right.
What else are we doing? So that's one question, maybe not to be answered right now, but the second question is, how are we creating, as we're developing strategic plan, a feedback loop that can pick up innovative ideas from the people who are on the field, especially librarians who are like day-to-day doing all of the activities and know the patrons face to face and their communities. So how are we incorporating that into the strategic planning and the data? Yes.
The first question about what else are we doing to increase the diversity of the authors. As I said, I think it would be helpful for the next group to look at the different steps in that chain from writer to publication and putting books on the shelf. And one of the things that we have done that I've seen, and it was mentioned by you today, Mr. Hill, about focusing on the authors, especially the local authors. And I know there was a program that Shanika Hayward had when she was at East 38th Street, where she did workshops with local artists and then, or excuse me, local writers. And then that workshop, through the workshop and some other activities and spotlighting the authors, really worked towards getting those books to publication. And she was even published in a book that came out in 2023. What's that book called? Promoting African-American Writers. And she talked about her program in that book that was included. So that's one way, especially local writers. And I know that we publish not only books from the big publishing companies, but we do self-publishing. We seek those out when we can find them. So we may perhaps need to do a better job of finding out what's going on locally with authors and making sure that we support and get those authors out there. The second part of your question, remind me again.
It was how to incorporate basically innovative ideas from the workers who are day-to-day with the patrons and also daily activities of and duties of the library.
Right, and through those caps, a lot of those caps come from branches who have observed things and dealt with their communities and some of the patrons that come in and have gotten some creative ideas, and they sparked the caps application.
Is that coming directly from an individual, or is that from like a branch?
It could be individuals within the branch as well. One of the things that people do is that they look at some innovative practices out there and think about, is this something that would fit us? I know there are awards that the Urban Library Council produces and commends annually. So those awards typically start with one idea and then that's produced. I think that's a good discussion though for the next planning cycle. How do we encourage more of that within the organization?
It's something that in my experience of ever since I used to work, when I used to work more as an engineer, you would go to a manufacturing plant and you would ask the workers on the line, on the floor, what would you do to improve the whatever process you're working with? They are the experts. So
Right.
then we will take that back and try to sort out which one make most sense and could be implemented strategically across the board. So that's where I'm coming from, but
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's a great idea.
I think Deb had a comment there.
And LGBTQ plus hold 45% of the print collection budget. And adding those together is kind of an unrealistically high number. And I think that we need to talk about adjusting our percentage, including all other forms of diversity, like Asian Americans and disability and neurodiversity and things like that as part of that goal. So I think that a few years ago, when we created that goal, there was conversation about them being stretch goals and that it was unlikely we were going to meet those right from the start. So that's kind of gotten lost in part of the dialogue with all the change of staff and everything. So we knew from the beginning that that was going to be a very challenging goal. So I think that 17% of our purchasing for African American of all of our print is a large amount. It's a lot of materials that are coming in. And our team has been working hard to find those materials and add them. And it's much better than what we were doing before. And it continues to be something that we're going to push and try to, increase. But I think we need to look at more realistic goals as part of the issue, not that we're not doing work. I hope that helps clarify.
And that 17% equated to 255,000. So that's.
Books about and for those communities. So we want to elevate the voices of diverse authors, but we also want to acquire books that target those and might be published by a institution and isn't a particular identified author. So there's a lot of nuances to how we count materials towards that. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was one of the reasons why, as we started talking about long range planning, we need to think about the kinds of performance indicators very differently. I was so glad that you mentioned the stretch goals. We get lost in those kinds of measures, and it's so important. When we talked about really doing strategic versus long range planning, there is a difference. And so how we go about doing that, actually coming up with performance indicators that are realistic, and then say which ones are the ones that we're going to stretch. That will make a big difference.
Anything else?
That concludes the report of the CEO.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Anita, for your service to the library. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I feel like I was really submerged in library life tonight. It was a long meeting and I thank everybody for hanging in there. But I am really appreciative of all the touch points that we got to see, as well as our financial our financial baptism with the bonds and the other items that we covered. So I do appreciate that this was a long meeting. I'm grateful that everybody's still awake. And that was because for me, this was engaging information and engaging presentations and just a really good illustration of the dynamic organization that we are so honored to be able to serve. So I just want to thank the board for hanging here, for look at all these people still in the room, Craig. So thank you all for that. I think I guess there's some more stuff on the agenda, but it's kind of that late in the day stuff, and I'm not sure that we have much more to do. We don't have unfinished business. We don't have new business. We've got discussion and agenda building. I'm sorry. Did anybody else have comments? I didn't mean to go. I just know it's late and okay. Future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items that anyone would like to
I just want us to celebrate Michael Torres, who has been with the library now for 26 years. And he is celebrating that anniversary. He works hard. Thank you, Michael, for all your service.
Great. Agenda items for next month. Are there any suggestions?
Chair. I would like to see more of continuous conversation on the strategic planning. Not that we need to come up with a strategic plan, but just this kind of conversation to keep thinking.
I think that like the touch points, like hearing from shipping and receiving, to like to give us the, like a vision of kind of how these operations are flowing, the snapshot day. It was a really good meeting for library life to me. So I think that's great. And it allowed us to talk about some of those things. So we'll have to think about what's next, Greg, in terms of our next department. Anything else? Okay, so our next regular meeting is Monday, August 28th at the Warren Library, our Warren Branch Library, 9201 East 21st Street at 6:30. Board members will remember we will probably have an executive session in advance of that meeting as we did today. Is there any other business to be discussed?
There will also be a public hearing on the budget before your next meeting. That date will be circulated, but that will be on the committee day. So just be aware that that will be forthcoming. That will be a meeting of the full board.
Okay, and we want to get that out so folks aren't on vacation in August, right? So, yeah, okay. Well, Leland, I know we were talking about that. You've got a list of the budget process. If you can dig that up from last time, I know you weren't here then, just so we can share with the board so folks understand what our obligations are to make sure we get a budget passed. Okay. All right, if you'll send that out by email. Are there any other items to be discussed? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn
So moved.
Second.
this meeting.